My name is Gargi Chaturvedi, and I'm a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all to another edition of the ICS Wednesday seminar on the review of China's implementation of the UN's Women, Peace and Security Agenda since 2015. Today's seminar comes at a significant moment as we approach major global milestones. The year 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. The 25th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and the 10th anniversary of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. These milestones remind us of the progress made and the challenges that remain in advancing gender equality in peace and security efforts in China and worldwide. In 1995, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action laid out a comprehensive roadmap for achieving gender equality, including the critical issue of women and armed conflict. This led to the adoption of Resolution 1325 in the year 2000, followed by a series of resolutions that form what we now know as the Women, Peace and Security WPS Agenda. In 2015, the WPS framework was further reinforced through its inclusion in the Sustainable Development Goals, highlighting the interconnectedness of gender equality and global peace building. Today's discussion will take a closer look at China's role in implementing the WPS agenda over the past decade, examining its national policies, practices, and academic contributions. It will also explore key recommendations for strengthening women's participation in foreign affairs and peacekeeping, integrating gender equality into conflict resolution, and fostering a culture of peace that prioritizes women's rights and representations. The speaker for today's seminar is Professor Li Yingtao. She is a professor of international relations at the School of International Relations and Diplomacy at Beijing Foreign Studies University, China. Her research areas cover gender and international relations, non-traditional security, peace studies, international organization, and global governance. She is the author of International Politics Under a Gender Perspective, published in 2003, Feminist International Relations, published in 2006, Feminist Peace Studies, published in 2012, the Sustainable Development Goals on Gender Equality, published in 2016, and Women, Peace and Security in China, Historical Processes and Contemporary Practice, published in 2021. She has also written several articles on these areas, both in Chinese and in English. The chair for today's seminar is Dr. Usha Chandran. Dr. Chandran is an assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University and honorary fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. She holds a PhD in Chinese on gender issues in China from JNU. Her major research interests include gender issues in China and comparison with India, interface between gender and language, as well as popular culture, women's subjectivity in literature, and exploring sociological methodologies to study the Chinese society. She has authored several book chapters and journal articles and is currently working on an authored book titled Gender Discrimination at Work in Urban China and an edited volume titled Gender in Language and Expression. Now, before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may also use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Dr. Chandran.
Thank you, Gargi. Thank you very much. First, I must thank Professor Li Yingtao for agreeing to come today and give us this very important talk. And I have known her since 2017, and when I first met her, and in 2019 she came to JNU and also presented in our university. So it's been a pleasure to have you here. And so I think this talk is also coming at a very important time, at a time when there are wars being waged, partial and complete wars. Such a discussion of such a topic on UN resolution is, I think it's a very important time. So it's become more relevant and important, especially in the current global scenario. So since the nature of warfare these days is not as it as used to be before, because they have undergone enormous change, and unlike before, women and children are also directly have become direct targets of attack. Earlier, they were indirectly influenced by war, but they have. Today only we saw the news, so they have become targets of direct attackers. So even earlier, we were aware that women used to. In fact, women were are the ones who get most affected by conflicts, especially wars. By in different ways. They bear the brunt of war and any other conflict. And during COVID also we saw. So I think today, apart from the loss of families and livelihoods, sexual and gender-based violence, and even personal, autonomy has come under threat due to wars. So besides, even the peace process, they are being marginalized. And we all know that in 1995, China, hosted the Fourth World Conference, as Gagi also mentioned, and I think deeply impacted the research in China, and it took a turn. And so I'm really looking forward to today's talk by Professor Ling Tao, and looking forward to what happened after 1995 till today. Thank you. Over to you, Ling Tao.
Thank you so much, Professor Chandra, and thank you so much, Gaji. And especially, I would like to express my appreciation to the Institute of Chinese Studies, India. It is a great honor for me to be here with you and share my study. Then, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm Ling Tao from Beijing Foreign Studies University, and the title of my presentation is a review of China's implementation of the UN's Women, Peace and Security Agenda since 2016. And, I tried to explain this, but actually Gaji already introduced the story, so let me cut it short. When I talk about the title, I just think the title is too complicated, because it is related with not only China, but also China's implementation of the international norms, namely the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, abbreviated as WPS. My presentation is a set of 5 parts. Let me share my screen here. Okay, that's the title. And here, let's see. This is the table of contents. It consists of 5 parts: and introduction, indicators, analysis of China's position on WPS, and the concrete measures of China's implementation of WPS. Finally, the conclusion and recommendation. Consider the time. I'll make it quickly and briefly. Firstly, I'd like to introduce the topic, especially the 4 key international documents concerning WPS agenda. The first one is Beijing Platform for Action. As we all know, and introduced by Gaji, that the UN First World Conference on Women was held in September 1994 in Beijing. And the conference adopted 2 milestone documents. One is the Beijing Declaration. The other one is the Platform for Action. The Beijing Platform for Action covers 12 critical areas of concern, and the 5th critical area is women and armed conflict, focusing on the effects of armed or other kinds of conflict on women, including those living under foreign occupation. That's the first document. The second one is the UN Security Council resolutions. Actually, it's not the one, it is 10. On October 31st, 2000, the Security Council adopted the resolution 1345 on WPS. From October 2000 to April, April, I think 2019, the UN Security Council passed 10 resolutions on WPS in total. And after that, from October 2019 to October 2024, the UN Security Council passed 0 and veto 1. Actually, draft resolution drafted by Russia is vetoed by other, Western, not Western, most of the member of the Security Council. So as to now, it is only 10, and the last one was passed by 2019. That's the second part, second documents. Then the third one is the general recommendation number 30 on women in conflict prevention, conflict and post-conflict situation, adopted by the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. That's the third one. And the fourth one is the well-known, introduced already by Professor Chandra and Gaji, that 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Its goal 16 is promote peaceful and inclusive society for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build. It's too long. I think you can have a look at the slides. For all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Oh, that's too long. All those international instruments together constitute the WPS agenda, which with 4 pillars. One is here. Let's see. Here, participation, protection, prevention, and relief and recovery. But with the new resolution passed, the contents, I think, expand to anti-terrorism, to disaster and the natural disaster and different kind of issue, and including climate change issue. Look, this here. According to these slides, you can see, although there's 4 pillars in the WPS resolution agenda, actually, scholars and government focus on 2 issues. One is participation. Another one is sexual violence, gender-based violence in conflict. Yes, that's the general recommendation number 30. And this is the sustainable development. After this, I introduced the 4 important documents concerning WPS. Then let's move to the second part of indicators. Although we have so many documents, but how we can evaluate a member state of UN's implementation of WPS? So when we talk about indicators, we firstly talk about who be the actors, to who are the actors to implement WPS. According to the documents, above all, we talk about editors involved in the Beijing Platform for Action, and all those 4 documents include the state actors or non-state actors. The state actors actually play the primary role to fully implement the relevant preventions of Security Council resolution on WPS. Then the UN entities and the regional organizations, international non-governmental organizations play important complementary roles. Other parties, all the parties to armed conflict, civil society, and the women's organization also play their important roles. That's the who implement. Then how to review. When we talk about how to review, definitely the first standard indicator is whether the member state, the country develop a national action plan according to the statement by the President of Security Council in 2004 and 2005. It's all talk about the Council welcomes the effort of member states in implementing resolution 1325 at national level, including the development national action plan, encourages member states to continue to pursue such implementation. Please pay attention to this word, welcomes, and another word, encourage. So it's not you have to do that, but welcome you do that. So you have the flexibility. If we don't do that, it's fine, but I'll introduce it later why it is so important. Then we can say we review the implementation from the 4 pillars with different goals respectively. Okay, you have already introduced it, then I move forward. Because, when we review this issue from the perspective of the platform for action from the Fourth World Conference on Women, so this year's review, the 30th anniversary of Fourth World Conference on Women and adoption of the documents declaration, the platform for action. The UN women launched a guide notes in 2023 to guide the government, the member states, to review their achievement, their challenges. According to this guide notes, there is a part of peaceful and inclusive society part, and tell you how to evaluate that. Here, there are 2 questions is related with this evaluation or this assessment, like table 1, peaceful and inclusive society. The question 27 is, in the past 5 years, what action has your country taken to build the sustain peace, promote peaceful and inclusive society, and others I don't read them here. Then, the first indicator is adopted or implement a national action plan on women, peace, and security. So it tells us that if you pass that national action plan, it's very important, so important. Of course, there are other issues. You have a quick look. Then the question 28 is, in past 5 years, what you have done. The most important thing, look, is promoted and supported women's meaningful participation. So participation is another important indicator to evaluate your implementation. Here, something came to me that when I introduced the situation of China, if you are thinking about, India's implementation on this topic? Okay, that's the another question. So if we put all the indicators from the 4 documents together, we got 23 indicators. It's too many. So I just choose some important, significant issue to talk about connected with the real situation of China's implementation. Okay, here. So according to my research, local research from China, I established a set of indicators to review China's implementation in this study. One is if we have the national action plan or strategies, then women's participation, numbers, percent, fund, money, your budget, something, and women's protection. And for me, because I'm doing gender and international relation and peace, feminism, peace studies, so I add the peace education and academic research. It also included in the Beijing action platform for action. Okay, here, let's quickly move to the third part of my presentation. Here, analysis of China's position on WPS is not included in the indicators. You definitely notice that. But why I talk about this? Because when I do the research on the statements made by China's representatives at Security Council, we found the clue and the principle how China think about this issue, and the principle directly guide China's implementation. So it is important, especially some scholars defined the WPS issue as a diplomatic issue or international issue, doesn't connect it with domestic issues. But actually, in my research, I connect domestic and international issue together and bridge all the issues. And definitely I insisted that domestic issue could not separate from international issue, vice versa. So when I do the research content analysis on the statement, I use a lot of materials, mainly statement made by Chinese representatives at the Security Council meeting, and I count all the meetings, find all the statements. Then I separate all the, pick up some statements and divided them into 2 states. Why I did that, I'll let you know later. The first stage is from 2000 year to 2019. Why I do that? Because the last resolution passed in 2019. After that, the Security Council have a lot of argument and dispute, a conflict. It hasn't passed another thing. But if we take it as stage 1, we can divide all the arguments of China into 5 aspects. The content analysis shows that China's positive attitudes towards WPS agenda in general, generally speaking, we support the agenda. Definitely, that's Chinese government's attitudes. Then you can say China advocate for a holistic approach to eliminate the root causes of armed conflict in order to create an environment favorable to protecting women from harm that is caused by war. When we see words, it's clear, but what's behind the lines? Actually, Chinese China emphasize on development. Just now we talk about the Western perspective, participation and sexual violence. But in China's idea, sexual violence is important harm to China. We should protect it from China, from women. But sexual violence is not the root cause. The root cause is poverty, is the lack of development and that kind of thing. So when you only focus on sexual violence, actually you couldn't solve the root cause of conflict. So that's behind the statement. You can find that. Then the C, China emphasized on the primary responsibility of the countries concerned. So that means that if you want to intervene the issue in terms of WPS, you need to consider the attitudes of the sovereign government, sovereign state involved in conflict. You can't say international organization enter the country and interfere, something like that. So when we say the primary responsibility, that's the international norm. But at the same time, we can say China's emphasis on the sovereignty, the importance of sovereignty. Then D, the role of international community is to provide assistance to the country involved in conflict. Again, that's emphasized on the sovereignty of the international, the country in conflict. International relations, Western countries, if you want to interfere, you have to consider the sovereignty of the country. E, China believe that Security Council, the General Assembly, and Economic and Social Council, the Human Rights Council, and the UN Women should all have a full role to play so as to achieve synergy. This is a good idea of synergy. But if you read behind the lines, behind the words, you can say in the first stage, actually, China emphasized on, women issues and the WPS issues actually is a task all the international entities should involve, but especially UN Women, not Security Council. You can read that behind the words. So China emphasized on the synergy of all the, United Nations system should involve. That's in the first stage. But when we look at the second stage from 2020 to 2004, we also can divide the statement into 5 aspects. The first one, we must implement the protection of women, increase the protection of women from armed conflict. And it is the best protection for women to achieve achieve peace. So here, you notice China's representative directly talk about the 4 pillars of WPS, that's the protection. So before we talk about the general position, but right now we directly talk about that concrete issue. So protection of women. Secondly, we must commit ourselves to putting gender equality into practice, making more opportunity for women to participate and supporting women to play a greater role in peacekeeping and peace building work. Again, directly talk about women's participation. Again, the 4 pillars, one of the 4 pillars. And then C, we must put development and peace into practice, empower women to be self-reliant, improve their political status, and most fundamental and enhance their economic status. Here, actually, China clearly, tell the world that our position is our, idea or is that economic is important to improve women's situation, to, change the root cause of the conflict. So empower women, especially economic empowerment is important from China. That's real China's, perspective. We don't need read that behind the words, because that is the words and is the meaning behind the words. Then D, progress of gender equality cannot be separated from a stable political environment. Enhancing the resilience of women in conflict areas is an essential part of WPS. Here we talk about the international environment, talk about especially the political environment, because China emphasizes on political dialogue instead of war and conflict, and especially they talk about women's resilience or resilience of women. That's very UN discourse, sometimes Western discourse, UN discourse, resilience in this the second stage, China use it a lot. Then E, China has always been an advocate for gender equality, a supporter of WPS agenda, and a contributor to international women's development. Here we can see in the second stage, actually, China didn't talk about the broad generation, holistic idea, to talk about a very concrete idea. You can see the attitude, change. And I would like to say this is a kind of discourse shift from broad general attitude towards a concrete policy. Okay. Again, when we move to the review of China's implementation, I'll introduce it quickly. The most important thing, that's a national action plan on WPS. Sorry, China hasn't adopted a national action plan on WPS. You can see as of the end of 2024, there are 112 countries and some region adopted national action plan, but no China. But I think if you can find India, I think although we don't adopt the national action plan, it doesn't mean China doesn't want to implement WPS. So as a scholar, according to my observation, I think the way China use is to integrate WPS into the existing mechanism, and not develop a new national action plan. Okay, that's the one indicator. No. Then, yes, there are others. Actually, I can't. No Indians. Then, when we talk about China's attitudes in China's political, climate system, we have to see President Xi Jinping's two speeches played important roles. Because when President Xi Jinping delivered the speech at UN, his speech guide our research and guide our practice in implementing WPS. So I'd like to briefly introduce his two speech. One is in 2015. President Xi Jinping delivered a speech at a global leaders meeting on gender equality and women's empowerment. He reaffirmed the spirit of the Beijing conference with renewed commitment and pledged greater efforts to promote gender equality and women's all-round development. China support UN women's work and commitment, a lot of donation and other thing, foreign assistance, something I just put international assistance, I just put it here, international aid here. But the most important thing is he put forward 4 major points which guide us research definitely. One is we should strive for women's development, tandem with social economic process. Look, that's the topic. Clearly emphasize the development issue. Second, we should protect women's rights and interests. And women's rights and interests are basic human rights. That's the slogan, women's rights are human rights. Then the third one, we should make efforts to build harmonious and inclusive society. If, in the 2030 Sustainable Development use peaceful and inclusive society. In 2015, President Xi Jinping used harmonious and inclusive society. And the fourth one is that we should foster the global environment favorable to women's development. Okay, that's the thing. The first speech. The second one delivered in October 2020, also at the level, of UN, at the high level meeting held by UN to mark the 25th anniversary of the conference. President Xi Jinping also put forward 4 major steps for the world to take. First is we need to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on women, that's during the pandemic area. The second one is we need to strive for genuine gender equality. It's interesting. In Chinese, that's genuine gender equality. So which one is fake? Which is genuine? That means, according to my understanding, that's put the gender equality from law into the reality, make it reality. Then third, we need to ensure women advance at the front of our time. Then that's women's participation. Then fourth, we need to enhance global cooperation in advancing women's development. He also mentioned that more should be done to eliminate violence, discrimination, poverty, and other old problems, and to address new challenges such as bridging the gender digital divide so as to make women-related target earlier harvest results of the UN's 2030 agenda. According to my explanation, when President Xi Jinping talked about making women-related targets earlier harvest result, I mean, he meant that put women issue or gender equality on the priority. I think of the sustainable agenda. Yes, that's the second one. One is the platform action, a national action plan. Then the President Xi Jinping's speeches. Then third one is about the comprehensive national level review of People's Republic of China on the implementation of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. In recent 10 years, we submit 2, as well as India. Your country, government also submit that to UN Women. One submit in 2019, another summit in 2024 to evaluate our implementation. In these two report, we can find some key process, especially concerning the peaceful and inclusive society. Here, compare the two reports. Two aspects need to be mentioned. One is, WPS is included in the 2020 and the 25 reports. The reason I mentioned that is actually in the 2015 report, there are no very clear clue about WPS. But in these two reports, we can find very clear contents concerning WPS. And also I have 3 points concluded into, one is China actively promotes the establishment and maintaining a peaceful environment for women's development, still women's development. Second, Chinese women actively participate in maintaining and promoting peace. The third one, China is deeply involved in and actively promote cooperation and exchange in women's affairs around the world. Consider the time, time flies. I just go through quickly. I quote another materials from China's statement at Security Council meeting. It mentions some important women peacekeepers here. I just escape it. Then we also can find some materials in the national program on development of Chinese women. That is the very important, the key guidelines for women's development and the gender equality in China. That's the previous. We also have another one. Yes, this is the new one. We are implementing this one, the national program on development of Chinese women. From these two national programs, we also can see some connecting with WPS, but there are no clear languages, sentence talk about WPS directly, like this. So I quote the remarks by Ambassador Fu Cong at the UN Security Council. The latest remark, a statement, gave us some, numbers. We have trained more than 200,000 women in more than 118 countries and sent more than 1,000 women peacekeepers to UN and some cooperation. I just escape it. And here another numbers. That's the almost the last pages numbers. I'm glad to say that in 2025, China got it third vice for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's not that much. Only from the established founding of People's Republic of China, we have 3 vice minister of foreign affairs. Hua Chunying is the third one, just appointed now. Then recently we have appointed some women ambassador, not that much also, but you can see it's 10 higher than 2019. It's a great progress, although it's not that much. We have to admit that. And consider the research. We did some, a lot of published a lot of books, articles, in terms of women, peace, and security. I just list here and escaped. If you want the PowerPoint slides, I can send it to you. Then I have to go to the conclusion. Although I introduced the policy attitudes, China's attitudes towards WPS, and gave some, considered time, some little figures, I'd like to say China hold positive attitudes towards WPS in general, and believe women's participation is important, and women are the biggest victims of war and conflict. So China made a lot of achievement, and we should do more. And here, I'd like to say, actually here, I want to add an important argument from feminist scholar of China right now. Because we define WPS as a foreign affairs, especially when we do the bilateral or multilateral diplomacy. We think, especially international assistance in China, we insisted on not adding any condition to foreign aid policy. But from our perspective, we think gender equality is not a condition. It is a commitment to international society. So you can't say we don't add additional condition to our international aid. So gender equality is not included, because gender equality is your commitment, not condition. I think that's the most important argument when I do the research and put forward the suggestion. Okay, that's from the academia. Then I gave some suggestion. Just now, that's one. Don't consider gender equality is an additional condition. It's a commitment. Then I think we need to attach more attention to this issue. No matter it is foreign affairs or it is domestic issue, because when we create peaceful international, environment, we also need to establish peaceful domestic, environment. They are linked together. That's so important for us. So again, as a WPS scholar, I would like to advocate for WPS, as well as make every effort to push for the China more actively implementation. Again, I add that I advocate the bilateral cooperation between India and China, at least in academia, to put forward, to push advance WPS research and its implementation here. Okay, that's what I want to say. Thank you very much. I think I take too much time. Thank you. That's thank you very much.
Is Dr. Chandran here? Oh. I think the chair has been disconnected.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what is the matter. Can somebody, hi, I am Alka Acharya here. So yes, looks like our chair has lost connectivity. Just give her a call and see, is she around? She having difficulties in connecting? Well, thank you. That was a very, very interesting, very extensive and a very, very thoroughgoing talk. I must say, I learned a lot. I do not really deal with this field, so I'm not in a position to really make any smart observations here. But I must say that it was very informative and extremely, extremely instructive. So any news from Usha? Otherwise, we'll just open it up for discussion and let's see when she can join us.
Yeah, ma'am. I just called her up and she is joining. She disconnected, so she's
Okay,
joining
okay.
shortly. Yeah.
All right. So we'll then just wait for her to connect. But in the meantime, if anybody would like to just kickstart, Ritu's here. So Ritu, please go ahead and just join the. Yeah.
Hi, I was also, very thoughtful and interesting talk by you, Professor Lee, in Thao. I was just wondering because we also studied at some point of time this Beijing World Conference of Women, 1995, and subsequently there was a kind of a new surge of feminism or feminist movement in China, in the sense of mushrooming of NGOs working on various fronts. So we have Feng Yuan, uh, Gao Jianmei, who's working on law and women's equality issues. So there was a kind of in parallel to U.S. Women's movement, which was coming closer to the Chinese women's movement. But in today's situation, things looks very different. So I was just wondering, how do you look at now Chinese feminist movement in today's time, where you don't see much enthusiasm from US, especially from the women's movement issues?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, something happened and I lost my connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you, Usha.
yes.
So I sort of just
Yeah.
opened it up. So
Exactly at that time, I
yeah.
lost my connection.
Okay,
So
so what has
I
happened?
think the questions have started. I would just say that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can come
sorry.
We
in.
collect the question together to answer all I response right now.
Yes, I think you can. I mean, I just want to briefly talk about how, how, I mean, the few things that you've pointed out, that how China's stance have changed from being general to more concrete, and how China is now, perhaps emphasizing more on development, peace, and cooperation. And I think that methodology of looking at the speech of the Chinese leaders have proved effective in other fields also. And so that gives us an idea. But I was also wondering, when there was so much of positive attitude, then, as you correctly pointed out, the political participation is not enough, or not as much as one would expect, or the change, or especially especially at the high level. And also, I would like to know about the grassroots level, if there are any changes, and why still there a gap between in that commitment for women's more political participation. I think Ritu has also asked a question. You can answer them together. Thank you.
Yes, then I'd like to respond the two questions first. Then if we will have time, we'll have another round. As for Professor Agawa's question, you gave me such challenging question. It's difficult to answer, because there are two sensitive words. One is the NGO, the civil society. Another is the feminist in China. So if let me respond this in this way. When we talk about the NGO's role or involvement in terms of a feminist movement, in China we usually don't use NGO. We use mass organization, just like the All China Women's Federation. We call it a social organization or mass organization. It's the leading women's organization in China. But when we preparing holding the first World Conference on Women, there's some NGO grew up. Actually, I led one. the Center for Global Gender and Global Studies, established just around that time. Because when we preparing the conference, we had to adopt the common sense and the international norms concerning the international forum we hold in China, Beijing Huairou. I was there actually. At that time, China developed some NGOs, even the All China Women's Federation call itself an NGO. Although some people call it a gango, it's governmental, non-governmental organization, but it call itself an NGO. But I even called it the First World Conference the conference bloom, not boom. I mean, it just grows. But after that, when we look at the real situation, reality now, some NGOs growth at that time actually disappeared, but some new come out, emergent, especially the grassroots NGOs for human rights, and led by the young generation. It's developed. Oh, that's the situation. Some disappeared, some come out, but connected with the NGO, there's some different complicated situation, especially who fund that NGO. If it is foreign money, there's something sensitive. But if they made money themselves, it's easier. Especially right now, during the digitalized society, it's easier for NGO, especially grass NGO, grow. So I'm not pessimistic. I think we have chance to develop them. That's one about the NGO. Another thing is about the feminist. Actually, I always label myself a feminist scholar. It's fun, and I also have close cooperation with the All China Women's Federation. So it's okay, but usually in some political, arena, when I talk about my research, I would like to strategically call myself scholar on gender and international relations. In some, occasion, I call myself a feminist IR scholar. But sometimes you need to command the occasion. But I think it's not a big problem. I would like to label myself, but also again in the digitalized area, there are some gender issue is kind of easy issue, easy to arouse some conflict argument. So when you have a gender issue, we see money, we see there's so many followers talk about this from different sides. Then how to see that in its 流量? It's a kind of code of money. So when things and media are full of complicated arguments, it's easy to bring some, debates, some conflict. It's natural. So I'm not pessimistic again. I think I'm positively think we are on the way move forward. Yes, that's Professor Agawa's question. I'm not sure if I answered your question. And as for Professor Chandra's question, again, it's difficult, I don't know if you follow the trend of international women's participation. The world average right now is 27.2%. That's the world average. And there are 6 countries, their women's in parliament have arrived 50%. 6 countries, and another there are 71 countries have above 30% in terms of women in parliament. But China's figure is 26.5%, lower than the average, but luckily higher than the average of Asia countries. Because Asia countries around, I think, 22.5, something like that. But it's not good. Especially you are the country held the conference. That's a Beijing spirit, but you have low political participation. No, really, that's not good. So actually, we put forward some suggestions to the government, especially when we change, we'll have another general selection for parliament members. So it is the time to, take action right now. So I just read something to report, to advocate for a radical method to improve women's participation at any levels. And we have a strong increased gender quota system. We have to enforce it. Otherwise, we'll drop, decrease. That's the situation. We have to do something. Yes, that's my answer. Thank you.
Chandran,
Thank you.
there's a
Yes,
question
Zagip.
from Priyanka Kumari. She is a master's second-year student in Chinese language and literature from JNU. And her question is that in the context of promoting women's participation and protection, how is China committed to ensuring that marginalized groups of women, such as ethnic minority women, women with disabilities, and migrant women, are not left behind?
Yes. Again, good question, good question, difficult question. In China, we have a lot of good policy, people-centered policy. But how to make that policy, put that policy into reality? Actually, I think Chinese government and the leaders from different levels realize that issue well. So when President Xi Jinping talk about don't let anyone behind, he also talk don't leave any country behind. But in China's situation, we pay more attention to economic empowerment, the elimination of or reduction of poverty. Because in our idea, if you increase your economic income, increase your economic status, you increase your situation. That's right. But in terms of gender equality, when you increase your economic status, maybe doesn't mean gender equality. Because when men go like this, all women also go. But if slower than men, the gap between gender increase, not decrease. So when we emphasize on economic development, we have to integrate gender perspective into the development policy, development program, and all the things. So right now, we attach gender equality into it, but we need to do more. As a scholar, when we advocate for it strategically, the anniversary, the year is the opportunity. So this year, we did a lot of things, and we are doing a lot of things to publish, articles, to convene conference, to write reports to the leaders, tell them, look, this is the year. Although this is something strategically, but it's effective. Otherwise, you don't have chance. So like we do something every year on the day of the March 8th, we did something. On the year of the anniversary, we did something. That's, I think, strategically wise. That's it. Thank you for the question.
Are there more questions?
No, ma'am. As of now, there are no further questions.
Okay. Ragi, you don't have any questions?
Ma'am, I had a similar question to Priyanka, but then ma'am has already answered it. So,
Yeah, I think that's a very important point that we have to strategize. I think it was very interesting to hear from you that how you strategize your status as a feminist or as a gender scholar, as a women's scholar. I think that was very interesting. So, basically, I'm just asking another question because nobody else is there, and I'm taking the liberty of being the chair. Nobody else is asking the question. So therefore, you would not perhaps call yourself a feminist, but in China, but in the international setup, you would call yourself a feminist working on international relations. Am I right?
Actually, in China, inside China, in academic situation, I also call myself feminist. I labeled myself a feminist. And the interesting thing that actually in China, we translate feminism into two kinds of Chinese words, 女权主义 or 女性主义. When we talk about 女性主义, that's more academic, more emphasize on maybe femininity or something. But I call myself 女权主义. That's emphasize on power. I think gender equality and inequality is a power structure. So we cannot avoid talk about power, talk about gender equality. So that's the reason I call myself a 女权主义者, not 女性主义者. But sometimes, my colleagues, they call themselves 女性主义者. So sometimes, after you, I use 女性主义 when I write books, something. Because most of my colleagues, my co-authors, they use 女性主义. I insist I'm a 女权主义者. Yes.
That's very interesting. And any more questions? So we can. No more questions. I think one of my students had a few questions, but now she had to also leave. Rapi sir is asking a question. Yeah. Gargi, can you read out?
yes, there's a question from Rapai sir. Can you please briefly talk about what is happening in the Communist Party?
Is there anything happening? Because, I'm not a I'm not a Communist Party member. I'm, how to say, partition personnel in China. That's a kind of people not belong to any parties. So I think the question for me, I'm not on the position to answer. Communist Party is the leading party in China. We have the multi-party cooperation, and I think it goes well. but I really not on the position to answer the question. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think we'll wind up, and thank you so much, Professor Li Yingtao, for coming today and for agreeing even after you have classes and very busy schedule. I think it's quite rare that gender scholars from China are able to come and speak in this forum. So thank you very much. We have learned a lot from you, and we're hoping to have you more in this ICS other kind of conferences or more in Wednesday seminars and other topics. And thank you so much. I think Gargi, you can wind up.
Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We can wait later.
With this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We thank Professor Li Yingtao and Dr. Usha Chandran for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. The video of today's discussion shall be made available on the ICS YouTube channel. We would like to invite you to the upcoming Wednesday seminar scheduled for 26th March 2025. And further information regarding the event can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.